G'day everyone and welcome back to Educational Currency. Now, today what we're going to talk about is we want to talk about the imposter influencer in education. Basically, and look, this is a personal gripe of mine, it's that now everyone's an expert on educating people, and because of social media, we all have a platform to put yourselves out there. Now, in what I'm saying with this is, obviously, we've got people who are educators and they're trained, they go to university and they start to be educators. And also, there's experts. There are people that are experts in a variety of different industries and they have a message to mentor others, and these platforms are a great avenue to do that. And that is fantastic. But now, obviously, we live in a bit of hustle culture, don't we? And everyone's got to kind of show their expertise, I think, sometimes without the credentials. And so this is something I want to talk to, because these people have influence on young people. And obviously, as we've spoken about previously with mentors, there's a responsibility to that in what we're leading to and what kind of outcomes we've got there. So off the top of your head, Rob, have you seen this? Have you noticed this in the industry?
It's an absolute trend across society. I wouldn't just say in the industry. Our industry is a reflection on society. So society, you have the more hits, the more likes you have, the more followers you have, means you have more of an influence and more people listen to you. Now, how you generate them tends towards people's maybe weaknesses, maybe what they would like to achieve in the most easiest possible way. And these influencers, try and target that, which is not good. And I think education is just a product of that. So whatever's happening in society, of course, it will filter into the educational world. And all we want to do is just make sure that when you say a person is an expert, what have they actually done the last 10 years to make them an expert? This is the thing, not what you look like, not what you sound like. In our case, not the 99.95 mark that you achieved and this is what I did, you can do the same thing. What has that person done that actually makes them an expert? So as educators, we'd like to, we will talk about this topic so you can be more aware of, if a person is an expert, well, I need a history of what that person's done.
And that's something we'd really want to put out to, especially to young people who are seeking knowledge. Okay, who are you listening to? What are their credentials? Where is their experience? Do they have a study experience? And think about that for yourself as you're trying to find your pathway. If you do want to grow in a particular industry, what would it be that would allow you to grow? What courses could you take? What readings could you do? And then that's what you should be sharing. Ultimately, and I think this is what separates the imposter influencer from the real mentor educator, is there's got to be that passion. They've got to love what they do and they've invested themselves into it.
And they themselves are getting better. There is no expert. There's just a journey that you've taken to acquire a certain amount of knowledge in a certain field that you are at that point. Now, after you've acquired that knowledge to that point, you can give some of that back. But you're still acquiring more knowledge. Hence, that's why me and you started this podcast. I think the most dangerous one's diet. Absolutely.
The fitness industry?
Fitness industry, diet industry. It's one of the topics that students talk to me about. I keep relatively fit and I do a lot to do that. And there's a certain diet that I eat. But I would never give anyone a diet. Absolutely not, because I'm not an expert. I wouldn't take photos of myself and go, here you are, I'm 50 years old, I train really hard, eat this and you will be the same. Just to take advantage. It's very dangerous. This is what a dietitian's for. Dietitian's gone to university for 5 years and then worked in a clinical practice in hospitals. How would you write a diet to a person with Crohn's disease? How would you write a diet with another student that's had a history of other illnesses? Could be diabetic, etc. I mean, these things get very, very dangerous, especially with today's influencers, where they show these photoshopped, almost plastic bodies where they're dehydrated on chemicals, and then our high school students get influenced by them, wanting to have that same sort of look, when the actual person taking those photos doesn't look like that. They look like that for a very short period of time in order to sell you that product. And you get the same thing across education as well. You'll get places, come into this course, I got a 99 something ATAR and I'll give you the secret so you can get that too. I mean, these are university students with no teaching experience that were probably genetically gifted with a very, very high IQ. They managed to get a high mark. It's not something that you would want for your child. And as mentors, we have to educate our kids into actually finding a proper expert. So basically, what does it mean when you are an expert? What are you referring to as an expert? And what is an expert in society? It's something that we can discuss in this podcast and hopefully make it a little clearer for you.
That's right. So thinking about it, if I'm going to listen to this person's video, if I'm going to purchase their course, what are the credentials that are encouraging me to do so? Like I've seen it, and I've been on YouTube for a while myself now, but obviously YouTube has ads that pop up. Some of these ads that I see popping up where, you've got people who, easy for me to identify, are clearly inexperienced, but obviously they've purchased ad revenue, and they're encouraging you and promising you some great method that will get you whatever outcome you want, within 30 days, and you'll see it. And then they've got testimonies from people, and clearly that scenario is fake. It's even easier to create those scenarios these days and making scripts for scenarios these days because of the growth in AI. And I am very pro AI, but it's added another layer of data, which is very easy to funnel and not necessarily be discriminated by the person that is using that data. And that's what we're seeing out there. They're able to pick up on terms quite clearly. AI will write them a script and they can sell some sort of product or lifestyle. And we all know that traditional influencer on Instagram where they've got the beautiful car or the great holiday location. You can have this by following this method. And that's what we've got to teach young people as well, that no, the way you get that is through hard work ethic, and listening to experts.
That's right. So what is an expert? This is a big question. That an expert, personally, there's really no such thing as a, for say, expert. There is a person who's done one specific thing long enough that they can advise you, and you take on that advice and you see if it works for you. So, like myself, I've been teaching mathematics for 30 years. I can, to a point, help you with your mathematics. You may like the way I teach mathematics, and I've done a certain amount of reading of books, and I can articulately comment on things that, for example, we discussed with English literature, but you would not see me as an expert on English literature. It wouldn't matter how well I presented it. And there's the problem you have. An expert in one field may come across to another field, and that gets dangerous. That gets very, very dangerous because they are quite articulate and well-versed into one field, moving on into another field. Okay, you are not an expert there. And this is what we need to understand about in society. And from my other background in martial arts, it's even worse. It gets very dangerous, some of these videos I've seen for self-defense, self-protection, etc., where I'm looking at it going, okay, this is actually dangerous, what you're trying to bring across. And it's harder to see what is and what isn't in that realm, which is even harder to identify. But back in an education setting, an expert is only an expert in what they have taught, what they're educated in. And even then, have they spent the time in acquiring the knowledge, making mistakes to actually become an expert? In my case, greatest maths teacher ever to existed was Jamie Escalante. He was an American. He took calculus back in 1980 in a very disadvantaged school, and he actually got them all to pass. And the program he put in, a lot of kids started passing this high level of maths. And in his YouTube clip, you can say he's made a lot of mistakes before he was able to get that program right. So in the process of him making the mistakes, that's what made him an expert. And you've all heard the term of Michael Jordan missing how many shots. You know, he missed so many shots in the final and lost so many matches that eventually he became really, really good at what he's doing. But any one of these people are very specific to one thing. And this is, as students, as parents, what you need to really look out for. So anytime you're taking on advice, anytime, whether it be with education or with life, you really need to look at that person that's giving it and ask them, okay, what have you done? What have you studied? And what have you done the last 10 years? This is the most important thing. If you can answer those questions, you'll be able to, okay, maybe this person can give me advice that would work. If it sounds a little bit fishy and not right, 99% of the time you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you've actually hit the nail on the head with those illustrations there, that experience leads to expertise. We can't be experts, we are ongoing learners, but yet trying to really assess that level of experience. The way you kind of said it then too, it reminds me as well, in my role that I'm involved with a lot of subject selection discussions with students and their parents. And in that context, you've got students and people know subjects are scale on the HSC, physics, chemistry, extension 2, mathematics, okay? But can every student do those levels? And sometimes they are very hard conversations to have in schools. The people at those meetings, yep, I'm the one there for well-being, so I don't have the best input in that area, and I would not be giving much information in that area. I'd only present it from a well-being standpoint. But then we have curriculum coordinators in there, leaders of learning in there. They are people with expertise in that area. They have a background in that area of seeing previous students go through those same patterns and giving them advice. And yes, breaking it to them that you should probably not go those subjects if you hope to achieve because of the load those subjects take on you. So in that traditional teaching standpoint, do respect the expertise of what people are trying to get you. What have they trying to get across? Because sometimes they are trying to give you hard information, but they are the experts because they have the experience that you're speaking of.
Yeah, and sometimes what an expert says, it's a hard truth you don't want to hear. And you can always find someone else to give you another opinion. So the question is, you've got to ask yourself, are you validating something that you want to hear already? Or do you want the advice, proper advice? It's a very hard thing to really deeply understand. And you've got to really slowly think, okay, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm asking? And sometimes you don't know yourself. And this is especially with students. It's very hard to know what they want and what they are asking. And as teachers and educators, this is what we need to bring out of them. And like I said previously, it's the conversation that you can get an idea what the student is actually needs and wants. And then, as teachers, we can line up an expert to help them. For example, we did that once with a student, me and you actually. This year, student was in a higher level of maths. His IPT was going pretty well. We worked out for his actual HSC, it would be better to drop down to the level of maths and do a 2-unit computing subject that would actually really help his ATAR. And it was quite...
Yeah, it was quite successful.
Yeah, we were quite successful and it was quite rewarding.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, when it works well, it really does work well.
Yeah.
But if, on the other hand, you are getting advice from a non-expert, well, take the advice on and do a little bit of research of yourself with experts. That advice may be sound, but get that expert advice on top. Make sure that you are always aware of that.
Yeah. Be careful who you're listening to. I guess that's what we want to encourage out there to young people, because it's your time, it's your money. They might be promoting something to you where it believes, yep, this is the fast way to do it. It's a fast track, get me where I want to be quick. But once again, that's what they're selling you. Okay? But traditional methods, listen to those with experience, and that will help you get to whatever your goals may be. And obviously, remember, us as teachers, we are mentors. We should know the areas we are experienced in and also know the areas that we're not experienced in. And in those cases, as you mentioned, we refer.
Absolutely.
We refer. Use the management structures and refer in those instances.
Oh, absolutely, always. Like the age-old saying goes, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. You just have to accept that. Nothing is easy. Nothing is just do this and you'll get great results at the drop of a hat, which in today's social media and self-validating society, I see it's having quite a negative impact, wanting that dopamine hit straight away, wanting that self-gratification straight away. I want it now, and it should be easy for me to get to. Nothing good comes of that. And no one's ever achieved anything in that way. So with the imposter influencer, they rely on that. This is their world. This is what they create. And educate yourself, and we're educating ourselves.
That's right.
In actually, what is an expert? And from my opinion, an expert is someone who is still constantly educating themselves and learning. They're only an expert to a point of their knowledge. From my perspective, I have a certain amount of knowledge of mathematics, and in 10 years' time, I hope to have achieved a lot more than that. And then in 10 years' time again. Every 10 years, I would say you'd have to be a different teacher. If you're not a different teacher every 10 years, okay, there's a problem. There's a problem. You know, you really got to reassess yourself, look back on what you've done. And same thing with whatever else you do in life. You're only as good as what you've done the last 10 years or what you've done last. This is the way I've led my life, and this, in my opinion, could get you to the knowledge where you could give advice to someone. But an expert, someone else can call you that. You do not call yourself an expert.
100% correct. Very well said. Yeah. Very well said. No, excellent.
Okay. From an AI, I'm quite interested from an AI perspective. Now, this is quite a new world for everyone. It seems to be rolling out pretty fast across all fields. In terms of from a person who's becoming an expert in AI, what would be a positive influence AI has on education, and where are the pitfalls? What do you see?
With AI, obviously it's emerging very quickly in what's happened. Like pretty much what it was this time last year that, ChatGPT came out and really showed us what it can do. It has a variety of excellent positive influences on every industry, including education. The way we've got to kind of guide our students is that it's like a first draft. It's a guide. It's something that can support them. All right? It is based on pretty good knowledge bases, depending on which platform we use, but pretty much the standard is ChatGPT at the moment. But they've still got to see it as something they themselves can discriminate it against. And through discriminating, they are basing that against what they have learned at school. So what has my teacher taught me? Okay, this is what the platform is saying. And then from there, develop their own opinion. Like they've pretty much got access to a secondary source of information that will answer their questions, which is amazing. No generation before has had that before. All right, so you can see the artificial intelligence, it is intelligence. It is a source that can be accessed to, and it is good. All right, but they must be discriminatory in what they read and learn how to use the ideas and apply their own judgment in order to make it useful and effective to their own education.
So what would be the greatest pitfall?
Look, the greatest pitfall, and I think we're seeing it and we know what that is too, is when we get lazy with it. The cut-paste philosophy, we're not even reading it. And it's going to be interesting in seeing what the next few years of, or all year groups that we have, happens with assessment tasks. We already are starting to see it, that students are just, yep, here's the question to ChatGPT, they enter it in, it gives them a response, they can tweak it a bit and make it reword it any way they want, but have they actually learnt? No, they're just cutting and pasting. And so that obviously that is an issue for students, but it's also an issue for educators too, because they've got to figure out patterns and like, is my student the one writing this, or is it the software that's writing this? And that's challenges all over, because that, if not addressed, that will impact the quality of education in Australian schools.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot. We'll go into artificial intelligence a lot more in future, okay?
In future. Yeah, well, especially with our second topic now, it will be a topic that we will address later, and we will actually bring people who you could say they're experts in their fields to give us more other issues and topics that we will look at. We'll have guests coming in here talking about their area of research, their area of teaching, and what influence they can bring on with the level of experience that they've had. Because remember, anyone giving you advice, anyone who you're listening to, it's not the gospel. There is positive, there is negative. There's a certain, you could say, influence or discrimination that they bring into it. And it's just a matter of, okay, can you see it? You don't take on everything on 100%, especially coming from anyone. But there are snippets of valuable information that you can add to your life. And the one thing I found is, if a third person is telling you something, it's probably you need to do it. This is what it comes down to. Maybe you can hear it from one person who could be an expert. Then you could hear it from another teacher. Then you could hear it from your year advisor as students. I think it's pretty much third time you need to listen.
Especially if it's a hard truth.
If it's a hard truths, that's why they're called hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to
look at? I think what we've got to make sure of, obviously, we're talking to young people and we're saying, keep an eye out on who you see as a mentor and who you're listening to with experience. But also, I think it's something as well for parents out there to be aware of too, that, through these channels such as social media and obviously the growth in artificial intelligence, that we need to be aware that these perspectives are being put onto our children and that we need to intervene and be mindful of what they're watching and what they're listening to, okay? Because it's coming out there. We're in an age of information overload, and helping them discriminate who is the imposter influencer to who is someone should be actually listening to, the parent there needs to be the guide.
Absolutely. And for students, just be careful of those physical appearances.
Yeah.
These get very dangerous. Very dangerous. When you have 20-something-year-olds looking like they're really ripped and cut, that doesn't quite happen that naturally. There's a lot of chemicals involved. There's a lot of dehydration involved that can really damage your body. Having that marvel body, especially for young men, and I'd say even worse for women, it's something to take with a grain of salt. And best expert, see your PE department. Have a chat to there's always a good PE teacher there who's very well influenced in nutrition. Or even better, if you do want to diet, see a dietitian. If you've got a knee problem, you go see a knee specialist. Same thing with your diet. You do not get advice. The reason why I say I diet, because that's the one that's been mostly influenced. You get people eating only meat. You get people not eating meat because it's toxic. Then you get all these variants of food, etc. Whereas you walk into medical center, there's a dietitian right there. So these are the things that you'd have to be careful of. And with that, especially since we're looking at influencers, I would seriously consider a very healthy diet, especially for high school kids. Stepping into year 7 and onwards, especially doing your HSC, getting yourself into a good, healthy eating routine will absolutely cognitively give you that advantage.
Yeah, sleep and diet. They're very big. Sleep and diet.
Sleep and diet gets you mentally ready to study. And like I said before, sleep, we'll look at that as a whole separate section. But diet, like I said, go to an expert.
That's it. Excellent. Okay. So watch out for those imposters, guys, okay?
Okay, take care, and we'll see you at our next.
Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.